Greetings and salutations, and welcome to the Black Doctoral Network Conversation Starters. My name is Dr. Janelle C. Hall, and I will be your guest moderator for this evening. Today's topic, an informative conversation on increasing voter participation challenges and recommendations. We have two great guests this evening. Our first guest, Ayanna Best, is a doctoral candidate in the Political Science and International Relations Department at the University of Southern California. Her research primarily focused on the effects of state-sanctioned violence of Black women's political participation and civic engagement. Her dissertation argues that Black women possesses a stronger sense of a collective consciousness through their shared experiences and are more likely to mobilize against police violence because of the threat it poses to themselves and, more importantly, their loved ones. Ayanna earned her BA in political science from the University of California, Riverside. She previously held a research position at the USC Center of Feminist Research, working on projects addressing homeless for women of color in California, and is currently working with the California Black Redistricting Hub, providing policy analysts that inform strategic priorities and planning related to redistricting in the Black community. Welcome.
Thank you,
Ayanna. Future Dr. Best. Next, we have Dr. Anthony Everett. Pronouns, he, him, and ours. Is a public theologian, social entrepreneur, and prophetic activist. He serves as an executive director of Mission Behind Bars and Beyond Incorporated, an ecumenical faith-based 501c3 nonprofit organization whose mission is to educate every community across the Commonwealth of Kentucky to welcome, support, mentor, and equip returning citizens with the tools to successfully re-enter society. He is also an ordained elder of the United Methodist Church. Dr. Everett earned the Bachelor of Science degree in Organizational Management from Paul Quinn College, the Master of Divinity degree with Urban Ministry certification from Southern Methodist University, and the Doctor of Ministry degree from United Theological Seminary. Dr. Everett, welcome.
Thank you.
So we're just going to get right into it. The first question I have is, why is it important for individuals to exercise their right to vote? Future Dr. Best?
Yes, well, I'll start. I would say it's important for individuals to exercise their right to vote, primarily because voting has not only political implications, but also social and economic implications that impact our everyday lives. Your vote could mean the difference between providing resources for your community or losing those resources, those much needed resources. And it is important for, the Black communities in particular to have a voice and use their voice to help create change in their community and not let other folks or outside interests influence the decisions that are made for us for our everyday lives.
Thank you. Dr. Everett?
I agree with everything she said, and I would add that in a democracy, voting allows for the voices of all to be heard. And so that all is our Black, Indigenous, people of color community. That's the LGBTQIA plus community. That's adolescents, older adults, females, non-binary, and males, rural and urban. That's any class identifier that we have in the society, able and disabled, any other kind of identifier that's there. And I think it's extremely important in that sense. Now, I would say that we don't have a true democracy. We don't have a one person, one vote in this country. We have, I've heard the term representative democracy, in which we have people that we vote on to represent us that don't ever represent us. I'm in Kentucky, so you can't imagine that the representatives that I have don't represent me well. But that's what I see as the voting importance is making sure that your voice is heard.
And Dr. Everett, what are the steps that you have taken for that to manifest itself in Kentucky? Have you taken any of additional steps?
Oh yeah, I've been engaged in a number of different ways. So my organization, Mission Behind Bars and Beyond, um, we work with returning citizens, and so in Kentucky we have a problem with returning citizens having the right to vote, and we've been in the forefront of pushing with that alongside with the ACLU and alongside with the League of Women Voters and other organizations that we can coalesce with to push the issue. You know, we've got we even have a number of people that recently had gotten their right to vote back, but they don't even know it. And so we're in the process. We've got a coalition that's working to make sure that those individuals know that they have the right to vote and to help them through the process. So that's just one of the things I'm engaged with. I will say that as well. I'm engaged with an alliance. It's Commonwealth Alliance of Voter Commonwealth Alliance of Voter Engagement, and so basically it's a 501c4 that is all about expanding the vote in Kentucky, so that all voices are heard.
Wow, that's interesting that you just said they don't even know that they have the right to vote.
Right. Yeah.
Almost like it's strategically done. We put them, they have the right, but they just didn't know. So it's, the onus is on them to find out, it seems as so.
Yeah. Well, it is, but that's the problem. One of the major problems that we have is that, and that's across the nation, is that people don't, it depends on where you go, whether someone has the right to vote or not. And Kentucky is in the lead of not allowing for former felons to or returning citizens to vote. And so there's intention, I believe, in terms of not allowing for, because of what I was going to say Dr. Best, Dr. Best, prophetic. That's a prophetic word.
That's
Dr.
right.
Best was saying, that there's empowerment in those voices being heard, and so you keep those numbers down, and that's a way of disempowering people. And even when you you talk about voter disenfranchisement, gerrymandering takes place, in which you'll have African Americans who live in urban areas, but they've been jailed in rural areas, and those rural areas will count them in the census, and the urban areas don't get to count them in the census. And so it's a disproportionality that takes place.
Very interesting. The next question I have is, how have voting laws impacted the Black community? Future Dr. Best, since Dr. was speaking last.
Yes. Well, I'll start off by, mentioning how they have affected the Black community historically. Since the 15th Amendment gave African Americans the right to vote, and states automatically instituted, poll taxes and grandfather clauses and literacy tests, all of which were legal ways to disenfranchise Black people, even though they were given the legal right to vote. So since we've gotten this right, the laws have always impacted our community, because we haven't been able to speak for ourselves and make changes in those communities. And now we see certain states continue to disenfranchise Black folks with legal laws put in place, like in Georgia with SB 202, which made it a crime just to give out water in polling lines, and impose like ridiculous voter ID practices and all kind of stuff. So voting and making sure that your voice is heard, and your concerns are addressed and said, and that the people who are in power and to represent you, we hold them accountable, and we can do that all by voting.
Okay, let me ask you this: do you think the election of President Obama and then this last recent election started this whole series of voter laws happening, like, because the other party, the Republican Party, wanted their representation in the White House and so forth. So you think that now this is starting to happen now to make the superior party and get into the office?
Yeah, we definitely see it where, like through political science, we're seeing it manifest itself in different ways now since the election of Barack Obama. But it has always been in place, like I said, like since since we were given the right to vote, there has been a number of disenfranchisement strategies all over the United States. And people sometimes attribute it, like when we talk about, the Voting Rights Act and like pre-clearance and stuff like that, they kind of attribute it to the South, but it's really, a nationwide issue where they have always tried to quell the Black voice in their own communities, and so they don't have to provide us the resources that we need to really make change in our neighborhoods.
Thank you. Dr. Everett?
Yeah, so I want to add that the 15th Amendment gave Black men the right to vote. It didn't give Black women the right to vote.
Very true.
And Sojourner Truth was one of the ones that was standing up against that, making that plain. And so when we look at there are a number of voting rights acts over the years that were attempted to be in place and either failed or didn't go far enough, and not only just for African Americans, but for indigenous people and for others as well. And so that's been a major problem. So I would say that, since we got here, since the beginnings of this nation in 1619, as Nicole Hannah, forgetting the last name, I'm sorry.
I think it's Alexander.
No, that's Michelle Alexander, but Nicole, I'll think of it before we get out of there. But in any event, the 1619 project, addresses that when we were enslaved, you had no vote. Those who were fortunate to become free and get to the North were folks that paid taxes, but they still had no vote, and similar to immigrants now. And then, the same thing with, as we go along, as was mentioned, poll taxes, literacy tests, all of that kind of stuff, took place. Black codes and Jim Crow, and we get to 65 and the Civil Rights, the Voting Rights Act, back then. And so it made a definite difference, in terms of the law and a policy being provided to make that change. But again, going back to what you're asking, I think that when you have a Black person having been president of the United States, it's a threat to white supremacy. And so white supremacy reacts in a way that says we can't have this happen again.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
And I think is it Jones? Sorry. Was it Jones? Nicole?
Yes, Nicole Hannah Jones.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Nicole Hannah Jones. Yeah. I had it at the tip of my tongue as well. But yes, Dr. Everett, yes, that's exactly what I was looking for. They don't want it to happen again. So let's impose more stronger, stringent laws and put them in place and suppress the voice even more.
Right.
So yes, it historically has been around, but I think now they're really like trying to go in and put it in writing and have it executed properly, or more efficiently, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, it's a threat, so yeah.
Yes, especially this last election, how close it was, all of that. It was down to the wire type of thing, like counting by paper. It was serious. So that's why I think that's why the laws are going to be.
Well, the last two elections, Donald Trump lost, but he won. If we had a true democracy, one person would vote, he wouldn't have never won.
Correct. So. That's right. So my next question, how has social media influenced the attitudes towards voting? Dr. Everett?
Wow. That's, it's powerful. Social media has, I will say that. So for instance, when Barack Obama ran for office, it was as if, he was speaking to us individually through email, through social media. And that had people rallying around his campaign, older people as well as younger people, because they felt like, it was a personal touch, and so he was very effective at doing that. He opened the floodgates for it. Yeah. However, your opponents learned to use the same tactics as well. And so now disinformation comes about through social media about voting, about, candidates and what have you. And you can build a Facebook group that says, I don't like this candidate, I'm for this other candidate, and promote your views and ideas in that way. And as was just recently researched by Facebook, a study done by Facebook saying that they know that they've had a lot of influence over the voters in these elections, in the past elections, and that the influence has not been positive, that there's some influences that have been very negative. So I think, social media is just, it's just all powerful in that way.
Yes, and I agree with you. I just want to add also, they're monitoring now the feedback and the content of these groups, and they'll shut it down immediately because it may incite some type of violence and so forth. So now they're being mindful and taking that step to ensure, that that environment, that platform is safe. Mm-hmm. Ayana?
Yeah, I would just, I agree with all of that. I just would like to add, again, social media can be a positive source for getting more information on candidates, as well as like laws and bills that may be up for, on the ballot that year. But it can also, that false information can do more harm than good. So you don't have the proper knowledge or the proper wherewithal to vote, and then you're voting on something you don't know anything about. So I definitely think it's been a positive, especially for young people who seem to be completely vested in social media in their almost all day, everyday lives, and just trying to build coalitions and collective, ideas around elections and certain candidates and the importance of voting. So it's been, important in that aspect. But again, false information can do more harm than good, and we can have people voting on things they, know nothing about.
That's correct. And the young people, going back to Barack Obama, he wanted to get the young people. So definitely social media was that platform to do such. And he was successful in that. And moving forward, all his predecessors did the same, like you said, Dr. Everett. My next question, do you think that the educational system has a role in promoting voter participation? Dr. Everett.
Yeah, I think that, there should be civics classes that are taught that let this is a right, and in your community, it's a responsibility. And I think that education has come twofold. It's come in public school systems, but it's also come from our social institutions, the church and other organizations as well, whereas, take, for instance, a church that has, some kind of a voter registration drive. I know I've done that as a pastor. I can't tell anyone that you need to vote this way or that way. I can express my views on certain issues, on all issues for that matter, but we can also have voter registration drives, that and allow for people to be educated on, this is what's going on, and you need to be able to vote. But I think that educational system, and especially from K through 12, needs to definitely have focus on civics. And I'm trying to think. It's been a while since I've been in school at that age, but I'm thinking that we have civics classes that allow for you to understand this is how how government works. The three the system of three tiers of the system: executive, legislative, and the court. So if you don't understand anything, just to be at least be able to understand that, and then even your local jurisdiction, how the government is set up and where your vote really matters.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Liana, thank you.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I did not have any type of civics course. Now we did have like government in high school, but I think during high school, it's kind of late to be learning about the government and what's going on around you because you're about to enter society as an adult. So starting, like Dr. Ever was saying, civics courses, as early as middle school, and before that, teaching young kids the importance of their communities and the just educating young people on the importance of voting, what's at stake when you don't vote or when you vote incorrectly. And it also could be, helpful in retaining voters, starting if we start earlier at a young age and making sure that they are, they understand that this is kind of like a duty of yours, again, and continue that throughout their lives because, there's so much at stake when we don't vote or when we don't think about these things.
Yeah, I definitely agree with both of you because I do not recall any civic course as well in school. Just when you turn 18, there's a push to become registered. That's the only time that I recall that ever being brought to my attention is when I turned 18. I received this document, especially when you receive your driver's license, right?
Yeah.
And you have to fill out, do you want to use this as a form of registration, voter registration? You will check off the yes, and there you are. You're registered, but then you never think about it again.
Yeah.
Until it really counts, and then everybody's pushing for you to vote. So I do agree with both of you.
If I could say one more thing on that, I think what's important as well is that our families and our communities are encouraging people at a young age, to let them know this is what's going on, in terms of politics, and then as well to better understand, that it's an expectation that you will vote when you're of age to be able to vote. I think that's extremely important because those close relationships they have a greater influence sometimes than what can be shared in the school.
That's correct, because the family is one of the social structures for an individual. So yes, the family will be the first platform to be introduced to that. That's absolutely correct. My next question is, in what ways has the COVID-19 pandemic impacted the voting process? Ms. Bess?
I would say in some ways, COVID-19 has provided, despite all of the harm that it's doing, but it has provided historically disenfranchised populations and communities more access to the voting process. It has reduced the cost of having to go out and travel to voting polls or to stand in line, or who's going to watch your children when you're trying to vote. So just getting being able to get a mail-in ballot and send that off, and not having to go through the hassle or the process of traditional the traditional voting process, I think has been a plus in getting more people engaged in the voting process. And I would say that I've seen more candidate information sent to my home than previous years, or maybe it's because I'm home more often now. But I can tell I was more these past few elections, that election cycles that happened in 2020. I was just more, even recently with I'm in California, so the Gavin Newsom recall. I was just more knowledgeable about what was going on and the different bills and laws that were trying to be passed, because I was getting this information more frequently to my home, and I was able to sit down and read it. So I think that it has, for all that the bad, it has helped the voting process a little bit to bring in more voters.
Thank you, Dr. Everett.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that what has given us the opportunity to imagine voting in a new way, not just the ways that we've been doing it in the past, but to imagine that, for instance, to have like a drive-by voter registration, which I worked with the NAACP up in Cleveland, my church, because I had a church in Cleveland at one point, and we did that, and this was during the pandemic, to have a voter registration take place during the pandemic, where people would drive by, they would fill out the forms, hand it to someone, and you give them a breakfast as well as a mask. I mean, Black folks are creative like that. So, I think that, doing, it has impacted us in a positive way. I would say that, any kind of pandemic like that is negative and harmful. However, because of our ability to imagine and to create new things, I think that's what's been powerful through all of this.
Right. And I agree with you, especially as you can see, we have proof through the last election, all those mail-in ballots that came in.
Oh, yeah.
So that's our proof in the pudding in terms of how it impacted the voting process. It actually enhanced it because people came in more than they would have physically.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
My next question. What are some recommendations to increase voter participation in the Black community? Dr. Everett.
Okay, so I got me a cheat sheet in front of me.
That's fine. That's okay.
And I will say that it's from the Brennan Center for Justice, and it's the fact sheet on the Freedom to Vote Act. And so they talk about some of the key provisions. One is early voting. And I'll just name them off: early voting, mail-in voting, election day as a holiday, protections for individuals with disabilities, lessening of the voter validations, cracking down on deceptive and intimidating practices, voting rights restoration, countering long lines and related discriminatory practices, banning partisan gerrymandering and establishing clear neutral standards, providing procedural safeguards, automatic voter registration, same-day voter registration, online voter registration, protections against unlawful voter purges, small donor matching, shoring up campaign transparency rules, fixing enforcement of the dysfunctional Federal Election Commission, ensuring the super PACs are truly independent, restrictions on the politicized removal of election officials, enhanced protections of ballots and records, election infrastructure improvements, and requiring post-election audits. All of those are in the For the People Act. Well, part of it is in the For the People Act, but it's the Freedom to Vote Act that's was brought up by a group of Democratic senators on September 14th. And so all of those provisions are important. They bring together what the House of Representatives had brought up earlier, HR 1 that was being pushed. And they also bring together the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. So you bring those two together, and now you have this Freedom to Vote Act. And, I would say that it's important to look at what some of the experts are saying. Brennan Center for Justice. I've got a doctor of ministry. I don't have a doctor in political science or policy or anything like that, but I need to know what's going on. So I depend on people like the two of you to provide that information. Brennan Center does that. There's also even the Movement for Black Lives. They have a number of information, a lot of information on policy that needs to be addressed. So all these recommendations, I think, increase voter participation in the Black community, but also throughout the United States overall.
That was excellent and powerful, if I might add. Three that stood out to me was the paper registration.
Mm-hmm.
We do have to print it out and mail it in, which is kind of antiquated. It can't, because you have to sign it.
Right.
You have to physically sign it. So that's interesting. I was like, well, yes, it's paper.
Yeah.
It's actually paper, because I said the driver's license, when you renew, you have to check the box on whatever forms you're filling that would serve as the signature for the form. So that's interesting on that. The next one is that the disabled voters.
Mm-hmm.
What a forgotten population.
Absolutely.
What a forgotten population.
Mm-hmm.
That's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
That was powerful. And then the next one, Election Day is a holiday. A lot of people go to work 7:00 in the morning. The polls are open till 9.
Right.
That could be a problem.
Yeah.
That could be a problem sometimes, and we can lose people with that.
Yeah. I give you a quick example. Here in Kentucky, there was a primary election, and it was between young man by the name Charles Booker and a woman by the name of Amy McGrath. And Charles Booker was African American. Amy McGrath is a white female, Democrats. And Charles Booker would have won had the polls been open long enough to take in all of the votes that were coming in for him. But people were finding out about him at the last minute. So, that to me, that's a clear example of, make it a holiday and add additional days and, let people be able to vote at night. And it's not rocket science.
Right.
And you can do it electronically. We can do all of this on the computer. We can set up a Zoom meeting and have people vote automatically.
Yes.
How come we can't do that, this way? We trust Zoom. We don't trust, the ingenuity of people to be able to do that. So.
Right. Miss Ayanna?
Wow, that you pretty much touched on, all of my recommendations. I would just add to your last point, definitely I think that all of these things can be, even voting itself can be done, electronically. Like since the pandemic, they found ways to, verify identities and, send pictures of your ID, etc., all through your phone and your laptop. So I think that to make it even more accessible, making it so that we can do, you can send in your ballot through a government-ish identified website would be great. And also, like, even the things that we have been talking about, just instituting a civics course in the curriculum in schools, making social media a place, as you were saying earlier, where we can verify this information in these groups that are coming up with this, spreading this information, making sure that it is correct and that people are getting, the knowledge that they need to be smart and rational voters. And also just, lowering the cost of what it takes to vote. So again, not having to travel to polling sites or, making sure that, people don't have to stand in long lines, and making everything more efficient. So these paper ballots and things like that, things can, it's a lot of antiquated stuff in voting.
Yes.
And I think that if they listen to, more young folks and kind of got up with the times, we can get a lot more people voting.
What I did like in the last vote, if you guys remember, Lyft offered free rides the entire day, election day, I thought that was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Free rides. I only think it was Lyft. I'm not sure if Uber joined in on that, but Lyft, you were able to get a ride from your home to the polling site and back home.
Yeah.
I'm not sure who funded that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think that people realize how much of a difference that makes for people who don't have, transportation, or their polling site is, strategically placed so far away from their home. So that was really important.
Yeah. And especially during a pandemic.
Right.
Right.
So
Exactly. So my last and final question: how has your affiliation with the Black Doctoral Network helped to enhance you personally and professionally? Dr. Everett.
So it has helped me in a number of different ways. I learned about it when I was a doctoral student at United Theological Seminary, and was able to network and see what others are doing, and so it's encouraging, especially even on the Facebook group. You can ask questions of people, and they help you out in a number of different ways. So that's more of an informal way, but also through the conferences, the information is provided there. The ability to be able to present at conferences, so extremely important for folks that either are working on the doctorate or have their doctorate degrees. To be able to present in that way is extremely important, and we don't get those opportunities unless it comes through organizations like the Black Doctoral Network. And so it's been extremely important in that way. I see it as a great source of networking. I'm looking to get engaged more. It's just been helpful in a number of different ways for me.
Thank you. Ayana?
I would definitely agree that professional development for me, in particular, because I want to go into higher education or academia, is important, because I'm able to develop these skills that I otherwise wouldn't, be able to have access to. And also just being, again, the networking, like Dr. Ever said, being able to converse or meet Black PhDs and future PhDs like myself, and um, connecting with like-minded folks, and having a greater sense of like community, in what can be like an isolating experience at times, because at these institutions it's often we don't see a lot of folks like ourselves. So being able to network and meet Black PhDs who are already at the stage where I want to be, or that I'm trying to get to, and be able to find mentors, as well as hopefully one day being a mentor to other Black future doctors, so.
That's excellent. Well, on behalf of the Black Doctoral Network, we thank you for joining us this evening. Would you like to share any contact information so others can reach you after the show, Dr. Everett?
Sure. I can be reached at Dr. Everett at consultant.com. I've got a website as well. It's DrAnthonyEverett.com. So either one of those, I can be reached in that way.
Thank you. Future Dr. Ayana Best.
Yes. So my email is Ayana, AYANABS at USC.edu. I too have a website. It's my first and last name, Ayana, AYANABST.com. And my Twitter, I'm more active on Twitter. So my Twitter is Ayana, AYANA_BST. So you can reach me at any of those platforms.
Well, again, thank you so much for you both joining us today. We truly, truly appreciate all the insights you provided today on voter participation. And we look forward for you to join Black Doctoral Network. We can at www.blackphdnetwork.org. And we look forward to seeing you next week on Conversation Starters. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.